This episode is brought to you by Chevy Silverado. When it's time for you to ditch the blacktop and head off-road, do it in a truck that says no to nothing. The Chevy Silverado Trail Boss. Get the rugged capability of its Z71 suspension and 2-inch factory lift. Plus, impressive torque and towing capacity thanks to an available Duramax 3-liter turbo diesel engine. Where other trucks call it quits, you'll just be getting started. Visit Chevy.com to learn more.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
24 chefs, 24 culinary showdowns for 24 hours straight. Which chef will outcook, outpace, outlast the competition?
No chef
Escapes the clock. Season premiere, 24 and 24, Last Chef Standing, Sunday, April 27th at 8. See it first on Food Network. Stream next day on Max.
Hello and welcome to the 1865 match report as we're looking back on Forest's Easter Monday win at Tottenham Hotspur. Forest winning 2-1 to move themselves back up to third in the Premier League and back into the mix for the Champions League places. It was a hard-fought win, a nervy win at times, but Forest got the job done thanks to two early goals from Elliot Anderson and Chris Wood. Richarlison replied for Spurs late on, but Forest held on. And on a weekend when all of their Champions League rivals seemed to get the results that they wanted, Forest managed to do the same as well. I'm Steven Topless and I'm joined by Baz for this match report. We'll start, Baz, with the team news. So there were a couple of changes made to the team that started against Everton. So we had Matz Sels in goal, a back four of Nico Williams, Nikola Milenkovic, Murillo and Harry Toffolo, who came in and made his first Premier League start of the season. Midfield, Danilo and Elliot Anderson. In front of them, Anthony Elanga, Morgan Gibbs-White and Nicholas Dominguez, and Chris Wood up top. I did wonder if it was a bit of a 4-4-2 with Elanga alongside Wood, but that was the team, Baz, and that was the lineup. What did you think of that when you saw it?
I was kind of pleased to see Toffolo getting a chance. By all the rumours, he's probably gone in the summer, but I think he's been dependable without being outstanding, and he showed that again last night. I kind of thought it was a 4-4-2 because I thought Elanga probably ended up being the furthest player forwards for most of the first half. And I saw someone else say that it was a 4-2-2-2, so kind of box midfield. I'm not quite, we were a bit more fluid than that, but we definitely sacrificed width throughout the entire game, and actually that kind of showed in the first half. But I mean, you kind of wonder, like the way that Spurs play. I was kind of expecting it to be an Elanga and Hudson-Odoi combination, just to sort of break through their high line. But Nuno obviously opted not to do that, and then made more changes in the second half, and decided basically to stop them playing.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised as well that Hudson-Odoi wasn't involved from the start. He was on the bench, but yeah, Nuno's setup seems to be to nullify Spurs, make the game compact, and Spurs did try their best with crosses. I think it was 48 in the end that came in before they actually scored the one with Richarlison's header. So it shows you really what Spurs' outlook was on the game and what they felt was going to be their best way of trying to beat Forest. But we'll get into the match now, and Forest actually got off to a very good start. They looked bright early on. They were holding onto the ball very well, passing it around confidently and looking a completely different side to the one that faced Everton last week. And it was 4 minutes in when Morgan Gibbs-White spun away from Pape Sarr, drove forward, hit a shot at goal, which was parried away by Vicario, and then from the corner, Baz, Forest got the lead.
Yeah, it was quite a poor corner, but it was even worse defending. It was like because the ball sort of bounced away from the box and sort of spilled loose just outside the box. It was like Spurs seemed to think that the job was done, and Elliot Anderson just wellied it. Apparently, it took a deflection on the way in, but they just gave him the space to do that.
Yeah, and when you have that approach to defending where it just felt like they thought the job was done. You set yourself up for something like that to happen. Yeah, it did take a nick off Bentancur on the way through, and that made it more difficult for the goalkeeper to stop the shot. But Forest were in the lead with 4 minutes on the clock, and it was the perfect start. And Forest continued to play well after that goal. It did shake Spurs a little bit as well, the early strike. They'd actually been quite solid in the Europa League victory over Frankfurt in midweek, but here they were conceding after 4 minutes. And Forest were actually getting a lot of success down the flanks. Crosses kept coming into the box, and Forest did have the ball in the net from one of those crosses. Chris Wood on the end of it, but he was offside, Baz, and it wasn't given. Did you think that was the correct call?
I've seen a thing back of it afterwards, and yes, probably, but it's one of those where his feet were in the right place, but his top half wasn't. So it's very marginal. But I guess if that's the rule, then that's the rule. But it's kind of annoying. It was a very, very nice cross and very, very good finish as well. It's just a shame that his shoulder sort of was over the line.
Yeah, and I've seen it argued by people that he can't score with his shoulder or his arm, both of which were beyond the line. But I think with the offside rule as it is nowadays, that is deemed to be offside. And we also saw the automated offside in footage come up as well, which kind of confirmed it. So slightly disappointing, but it didn't matter too much because a few minutes later, Wood did get on the score sheet. And again, it was a cross from the left-hand side. Elanga had cut inside on his right foot, swung in a really nice ball, and Wood rose highest above Mickey van der Ven and Vicario, who tried to come out and punch, and the ball nestled into the back of the net for 2-0. And good to see Wood back on the score sheet as well after his recent comeback from injury and a couple of games out.
Yeah, I mean, that the second goal, it reminded me of us maybe 2 seasons ago. It was just like switching off from Spurs when defending a free kick, because Murillo, instead of playing the ball into the box, played it up the wing for Elanga to put the cross in. And it was like that just completely took them by surprise. And I mean, Wood had 2 but it's Van der Ven and Romero, and I really like Romero. I think he's a really good player. Van der Ven's obviously pretty decent, and Wood just was in between both of them and had a free header. So you have to wonder, it's like switching off. It's like, oh, well, no danger here, but there was.
Yeah, and even Porro at right back, he didn't attempt to close down Elanga and try and challenge for the cross. He just let that come in, and Wood was there to score. But if you don't do your jobs properly, that's what happens. And we weren't complaining. Forest were 2-0 up inside 16 minutes, and deservedly so. I think we were the brighter team early on, and to go 2-0 up so quickly was fantastic, particularly because of the pressure that had been put on coming into this game, because teams around us in the Premier League had won on the weekend. They'd also capitalised the weekend before when we lost to Everton. So without wanting to say it was a must-win game, it felt it was going into that territory, wasn't it? If we wanted to keep our charge for the Champions League places alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Everton loss, I said before for the match report on that, was it's eaten our cushion, as it were. So if we want to do this, we can't afford any more slip-ups. But the thing that worried me most about the Everton loss was the way we played. We looked tired, both mentally and physically, whereas for the first 20 minutes of this game, we were well on it, and well throughout the game we were well on it. But we had energy, and Anderson in particular was everywhere. and we didn't let Spurs get a handle on the game at all.
Yeah, and again, it came back to this idea that Forest don't need to have a lot of the ball in order to have control of a game, and we're so effective at that, particularly this season under Nuno. Even though Spurs had more of the ball and crosses were coming into the box, you felt quite comfortable, certainly in the first half, that Forest were in control of things and they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few little bits and pieces that worried me a bit. So Odegaard against Toffolo kept on beating him and getting crosses in, but the crosses weren't necessarily that good. And they had Richarlison as their target, and I think he's been out injured for a while, and he looked rusty. He wasn't really on it. And then every now and then, what's his name? Matz Sels. He didn't seem to do very much, but when he did, it was really, he basically burnt past Williams. And then with Jed Spence, Jedward, we all know really well, those two, their pace sort of left us a little bit exposed, but everything they were doing was basically on the flanks, putting in crosses for Richarlison, who wasn't capable at that point of doing anything with it, or they were reduced to, I think Kulusevski had a long shot from like 25 yards, so it was an easy save. And yeah, that's how it goes against us is, yeah, we'll let you put crosses in and we'll let you shoot from distance, but you're not getting into the box. And that's what happened, really.
Yeah, and you could see Spurs were a little bit toothless with Richarlison up top because, yeah, he's not at full sharpness. There was no Heung-min Son for this game. Dominic Solanke was on the bench. So even though Spurs did have opportunities, I don't think they had the quality on the pitch to take full advantage of them, particularly in the first half.
I did say in our group chat, it's like if Solanke had been on, it would have been 2-2 at half time. But because of the way they were putting the crosses in, he could deal with that. But Richarlison wasn't quite there. And I mean, there was a moment where Williams went to clear the ball, and for some reason he went with his head instead of with his foot when it was quite low down.
Yeah,
and he basically spilled the ball to them, and they put it wide. It was like, it almost felt like, it didn't really matter what we did defensively.
I think that was Matz Sels, wasn't it, who it dropped to, and he just swung at it and it flew wide. When a bit more composure, he could have got the shot on target. But yeah, it did feel like, even though we did have the occasional slip up like that, or where Toffolo was beaten by his man on the other flank, Spurs just wouldn't have scored in that first half. So it didn't really matter. And at half time, it was Spurs 0, Forest 2.
The 1865 Match Report.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to this 1865 match report as we're looking on Forest's 2-1 victory over Spurs. So into the second half then, and before the second half kicked off, we had a Forest change. Anthony Elanga came off for Morato, and this was the substitution that we've seen a lot from Nuno this season to try and shore things up at the back for Forest, bringing Morato on as the third centre-back. I was a little bit surprised it was at half-time, though, Baz. Do you think that was tactical, or was there an element of looking after Elanga as well, given that he's been struggling a bit with injury of late?
Probably a bit of both. I think a big part of it was, as we said, Odebear and Tell were getting these crosses in, so going to a back five would restrict what they were able to do, and it certainly for the first half of the second half, it definitely prevented Spurs from playing that kind of game. But yeah, as you say, if any player was to come off, I'd have preferred it to have not been Elanga because he gave us that threat carrying the ball, and especially he was doing that thing where he was basically playing all over the pitch, but especially when he went up against Porro looked terrified of him. So to have him come off was a bit of a disappointment, but I could see why we went to the back five. It was just the worry that, that kind of left us with just Wood as our attacker. And because Morgan wasn't really getting into the game either that much. He was getting the ball, but he wasn't in a position to do much with it. So Morgan would have been the only one really with any pace to carry the ball out of defence. And we knew that we were going to end up sitting quite deep with playing that back five. But as I say, it definitely ended up cutting out a lot of the Spurs threat for the first 20 minutes or so.
And I think it's a good example of Nuno's tactical awareness that he could see Spurs were getting on top towards the end of that first half, and changing it like that did wrestle back some control for Forest. And perhaps it was a piece of tactical nous that his opposite number, Ange Postecoglou, might not have done himself. So, yeah, I think again an example of Nuno's nous coming to the fore there. Forest did go close to getting a third, and it was Morgan Gibbs-White involved. He was played in, and the ball's on his left foot. And in the end, it was a bit of a swinger, wasn't it? It went well wide, and you would expect a player of his ability to at least be able to get something on target in that position.
I think it was kind of it was a nice move to get into that place, but I think it was kind of indicative of the game he was having, which was a frustrating one for him. Not that he played badly, but yeah, just it was one of those where things weren't coming off for him.
Yeah, and that's not a criticism of Gibbs-White at all. I think it was just the situation we were in, and perhaps his form at the minute, last couple of games, he hasn't quite been his usual self. But that happens. That's part of football. But the rest of the team were I think pretty impressive on the night. Everybody played their part, and even players coming off the bench. 58 minutes we had Ryan Yates and Callum Hudson-Odoi coming on, and that was for Nicolas Dominguez and Danilo, who again had both put in a really good shift. But I think Forest changes just helped to solidify things and make sure that they weren't giving too much away.
I think I would say actually those changes. I was pleased when Hudson-Odoi came on because we were we didn't have an outlet for the ball. We didn't have anywhere for it to go when we did win it back, and so the pressure was kind of relentless. And I could see, putting Hudson-Odoi on to try and do what Elanga was doing earlier and carry the ball forwards was the right thing to do. But I actually think we got weaker after those changes. Dominguez in particular was all over the place. He was having a great game, stopping them. There was the occasional moment where he would break forwards, but for the most part, he was, that engine on him. And I think it was one of those rare occasions where Yates didn't have quite the same sort of horsepower as Dominguez had when he came on. And obviously, Callum Hudson-Odoi, although he does put in a shift defensively, he's not the same as someone like Danilo as well. So I think we kind of weakened off a little bit in midfield after those changes. The idea obviously being to get the ball to Callum, but I don't think we got the chance to do that much.
Let's talk now about the big opportunity that almost went in for Spurs, but for the intervention of Super Harry Toffolo. It was a glancing header from Kulusevski from a Spurs corner. It had gone over Sels. It looked destined for the net. And then at the back post, Harry Toffolo produced a bicycle clearance to get the ball off the line and away to safety. This was a brilliant moment, as good as a goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, we talked about in the Manchester United game when Murillo made that clearance off the goal line right at the end. This was even better, and it's exactly the sort of thing you want to do to your opponents to demoralise them, because it's like you do absolutely everything right in attack, and then suddenly out of nowhere, it was almost like a superhuman clearance because he was facing the wrong way, and he had no right to be able to clear the ball the way that he did. It was fantastic.
And that kept it at 2-0. Brilliant as well for Toffolo, who hasn't been involved much this season. Like you say, he's probably going to be on his way out in the summer. To come back into the team, deliver what I thought was a very solid performance from him, and then to produce a brilliant defensive moment like that just shows, I think, the commitment that's amongst this squad, even for players who haven't been involved all that much this season.
Absolutely. And the other thing, again, on the back of the Everton performance, one of the issues I thought with the Everton performance wasn't just that we were flat and that Murillo made that mistake. It was that every time someone's made a mistake, there's always been someone else to cover for them. The way that the squad works for each other, and that clearance by Toffolo was proof that actually it doesn't matter that someone managed to get a shot away, that I'm going to be there to stop it, and be there to mop up the mess afterwards. And that was really pleasing to see. It was like, actually, that commitment's still there, that determination is still there. And Everton was, hopefully off the back of off last night's performance, Everton was a one-off rather than anything sort of symptomatic.
Spurs made a couple of changes. Then they brought on Dominic Solanke and Brennan Johnson, familiar face to all of us at Forest, as they tried to get themselves back into the game. They went close again. It was another cross into the box. Richarlison with the header. This one was much better from him. He got it low into that difficult place that goalkeepers don't like. But Sels was equal to it and produced a fantastic save.
Yeah, that was one of those where he showed off his agility, as it were. It was like his body shape was kind of all wrong for it, and he somehow managed to get down to claw it away, which is just, I mean, I'm awful in goal, but being able to do that, when you see someone he doesn't look that nimble, for him to be able to do that, again proves what a good signing he's been for us and what a good keeper he's been this season.
And when you look at, again, those kind of saves, you mix it in with the clearances off the line and the commitment that the team is showing, everybody is doing their bit for the team. And again, Matz Sels, who has been superb this season, just continues his great form, and he's shown himself to be one of the best goalkeepers in the league. Yeah,
I mean, it's just a shame he didn't get another clean sheet to go for his whatever Golden Gloves record.
Yeah, he's up there, isn't he? With David Raya of Arsenal is top of that chart at the moment. But yeah, let's talk about that Spurs goal then. And it was 87 minutes, just as the game was ticking towards injury time, and you thought Forest might have just done enough to get the clean sheet. Pedro Porro had the ball on the right-hand side, his cross into the box, and Richarlison this time got his header on target and into the back of the net with a glancing header that had Sels beaten. And at that point, it was nervy anyway before that goal went in, but this just increased the nerves tenfold, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things about that. So one, they'd put Bergvall on, who's a player I really like, a few minutes before, and he made a big difference. It was, I think it was Rich in the group chat said, after he came on, they were playing like 10 yards higher up the pitch, and we did feel more like we'd been hemmed into our box. And the Spurs, it wasn't a surprise that they'd scored, because the pressure they were putting on us was of a higher quality than the pressure they'd been putting on us for the rest of the game. But when the cross came in and Richarlison scored, it was also disappointing, because we've got three big centre halves in there, and he managed to rise above them all and get the shot in. So that was kind of disappointing, but it did feel like Spurs had made the change that was going to actually get them something out of the game. And yeah, so because of that, the last 5-6 minutes was particularly nervy for us watching the game, because they'd shown that they could make a change that would put us under pressure. They'd managed to get one goal off it, and to hark back to Everton, we'd slipped up right at the death before.
Oh, this is it. Yeah. Look what happened in the previous game. We threw it away late on, and you were a bit worried as Spurs increased the pressure and they got that goal, whether history would repeat itself. And Forest had 5 minutes of injury time initially to deal with. I think that ended up being 7 after stoppages and substitutions and everything were added on. But Forest did hold on and got through those last couple of minutes of the game. And in the end, actually, Spurs' momentum just gradually got sucked away in injury time. And there was a ball played out towards Awoniyi, who got away from his man and drove towards the corner, and eventually Forest won some free kicks and throw-ins down there, and managed to take all the momentum away from Spurs, and that was in front of the Forest fans as well, which was nice. You could see them fist bumping and shouting at the players just in those final few moments to help get them over the line. And when the final whistle went, I think it was just pure relief not only for the result but also what it meant. It probably, in terms of performance, wasn't one of Forest's most impressive, but in terms of results, it was massive.
Yeah, and in terms of they're showing that grit and determination, with that the idea that actually doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to pass. I think we needed that definitely, just to show that we've got that, especially with Manchester City coming up the weekend. We needed to be able to prove to ourselves that we could do that.
And looking ahead as well to the game coming up against Manchester City, the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley, I want to just bring back to Harry Toffolo for the moment, because he was brought in, I think, for a number of reasons. One being that Alex Moreno, in the last couple of games, hasn't really made much of an impact, and in the absence of Ola Aina, we've had Nico Williams move over to the right-hand side of defence. Moreno's come in. And defensively, I think Toffolo is the better player. And I think that's why he played last night, and he proved it with his goal line clearance. And the obvious balance he gives you being a left-footed left-back. Would you keep him in the side for the game against Man City if Aina isn't going to make it?
Probably, yeah. I think... I'm assuming that no matter what situation Aina's in, I'm assuming that even if he had been fit, Nuno probably would have kept him back for this game anyway, because of the way Spurs play and keeping him sort of fresh for Sunday. But that's just speculation. I have no idea of how fit he is. I think Toffolo proved that he's capable of playing in the first team and he can do a job for us. And yeah, Moreno, I think he's done a decent job for most of the season. But as you say, Toffolo's probably a little bit better defensively and gives us that little bit of balance, where Williams on one side, Toff on the other, probably works better than the other way.
And this result moved Forest back up to third in the Premier League, onto 60 points. 1 point ahead of Newcastle, who are fourth, 2 points ahead of City, who are fifth, and then it's 3 points to Chelsea and Villa, who are sixth and seventh, respectively, on 57 points. Given all of those teams on the weekend, bar Newcastle, got wins and got results which really put pressure on Forest. It was great to see not only the team respond and get the win, but put to bed any fears as well that we were perhaps dropping off and our season was done. Because I did see people, not only some Forest fans, but some pundits and football writers this week suggesting that Forest had probably run out of steam and that everybody else had caught them up. But on the evidence of last night, and particularly that opening 20 minutes, that's not the case at all.
No, I mean, so I especially after the Everton game, I was slightly worried that there was the thought this could have just been an off day, or this could be symptomatic of like a bit of not complacency, but like, yeah, we've got the job done. Or it could be this is actually fatigue. We've got a small squad and they've been playing a lot of games, and maybe some of those players, their legs are just starting to go a little bit. I think the result last night makes it look more like Everton was a one-off. It certainly doesn't look, it puts completely to bed the idea that we were complacent. I'm still slightly worried about the possible physical situation, just because there are those odd little. I mean, it's not as bad as the Everton game or the bit in. There was a bit in the Manchester United game where a load of our passes, like simple passes, were going astray. That kind of suggests actually, yeah, maybe these players aren't quite up there in their heads, are a little bit tired, or in their legs are a little bit tired. I'm not convinced that that's completely put to bed, but certainly in terms of the determination and the lack of complacency, I think yesterday was a big mark forward. And then not just that, but also having dropped to sixth, one result putting us back at third, I think psychologically that's quite important as well. It's just basically saying, yeah, we might drop down a little bit, but we can put ourselves back where we need to be.
Yeah, and that's been a really good trait of Forest this season in particular. When we've had those setbacks, you know, I'm thinking of Newcastle away, Bournemouth away. We've come back and we've responded, and we've put to bed very quickly any worries or doubts, because under Nuno, this team just, if it has a setback, it seems to make it stronger. Yeah,
we get back up and we try a bit harder next time.
So very quickly, looking ahead to the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley on Sunday. Manchester City, the opponents, they've been in good form of late. They're missing key players though, like Erling Haaland. Forest have already beaten them this season, and a couple of weeks ago at the City Ground on a brilliant day, beat them by 1-0. And going into this semi-final, Baz, how are you feeling, and how do you rate Forest's chances?
I'm nervous. I'd be happier if we had Ola playing. I'd be happier if I didn't have that little niggling doubt about fatigue, because obviously it's one of those games where playing against Manchester City, you're going to have to, without the ball, you're going to have to run a lot. And also it's Wembley, which is a big pitch, so we're going to have to cover a lot of ground. And the thought of going all the way to Wembley and then losing in a semi-final is probably worse than losing in a final. But I mean, we've shown we can do it, and we've shown that we can fight against the odds. So yeah, if anyone's capable of beating Manchester City, then it's us, definitely.
And that seems like a perfect place to leave it there. So we will have Friday 5 coming up later in the week, and then of course we will bring you reaction from Wembley in our match report after the Manchester City semi-final, and who knows, by then we might have booked a return trip to Wembley for the FA Cup final, we can hope. Thanks to Baz for joining me, and thank you as well for joining us. We'll see you later.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
How do you test new mattresses? Flop like a fish? Inspect every square inch? Or order online and just hope for the best? You could test mattresses any number of ways, or let Mattress Warehouse's proprietary diagnostic tests narrow down the selection for you. Visit a store near you to try Bed Match, the test that's matched millions. So where would you look to find the perfect mattress? In a little mattress store or Mattress Warehouse? Visit mattresswarehouse.com.